Research continues to reveal that the foundational beliefs that are held by America's preteen children is really putting them on track to abandon biblical Christianity in record numbers. These are troubling belief patterns, and they stem from young people rejecting core Christian beliefs regarding things like the Bible, absolute truth, the means to salvation, their purpose in life, the meaning of success, and a host of other things. So how can Christian parents and grandparents address this crisis, and how can they raise children with a biblical worldview? Well, I don't know of anyone more equipped to help us answer that question than my next guest. Joining me now is George Barna. He's the Director of Research at Arizona Christian University and Senior Research Fellow here at FRC's Center for Biblical Worldview. He's the author of many books, the most recently, Raising Spiritual Champions. Folks, this is a need we need to hear. Dr. Barna, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always an honor to have you.
Hey, Jody, good to be with you again.
Well, listen, this is a topic that you are passionate about. I've heard you many times. We were in a meeting just a couple of weeks ago together, and you have done enormous research that really has put forth so many details of this book. Can you kind of outline the extent of the problem that we're looking at in this upcoming generation?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple. We know that a person's worldview is developed between 15 to 18 months of age and the age of 13. And that worldview is pretty much going to define who they are, how they live, what kind of experiences they have, the lifestyle they adopt, all these things and more. Worldview is so critical because every decision that every person makes, every moment of their life, flows through their worldview. So they've got a lot of choices of what worldview to adopt or what elements from various worldviews to adopt. And what our research has consistently shown is that children are not being pointed in the direction of developing a biblical worldview. In other words, a decision-making filter that's based on biblical truth. Instead, what they're doing is they're adopting the ways of the world. And part of the reason for that is because their parents love them and they want them to succeed in life. But toward that end, they're not necessarily setting them up to develop a biblical worldview. And even when they go to churches, in most cases, most of our churches are not exposing the children in those churches to biblical worldview teaching. And so what happens is they wind up adopting what the media offers to them, what schools are offering to them, and what their friends are suggesting to them. And that's not in their best interest. What they wind up doing is becoming syncretists, which means that they've
And I want to get into that. Okay. Yeah, I want to get into that because you introduced that a couple of weeks ago when we were together, and I want to get back to that. But you put your finger on the issue. It begins at the family, with parents being more concerned with being financially successful rather than spiritually successful, and the lack of biblical worldview teaching in our churches. An enormous problem. It's just huge. But you do address this in the book, Raising Spiritual Champions, where in there you outline 7 cornerstones of a biblical worldview. I think this is so critical. Could you please kind of walk us through these essential cornerstones of worldview development from a biblical perspective?
Yeah, for sure. And, just to explain what they are, there's 7 very basic biblical beliefs that form the foundation of a biblical worldview. They're not a complete biblical worldview, but it's a solid foundation that you can build upon. And what I discovered in our research is people who have a biblical worldview, by and large, own these 7 things as part of who they are, part of their identity. If you believe deeply in all 7 of these things, you have an 83% probability of having a biblical worldview. If you reject even one of these 7, that drops to just a 2% probability. So they're critically important. They're simple. It's believing that God exists and that he's all-knowing, he's all-powerful, he's loving, he's just, he's merciful, he wants to be involved in your life. Secondly, recognizing that when we're born into sin. We become sinners, and that sin has dramatic consequences for our lives. Thirdly, the antidote to that sin problem is Jesus Christ. He died on that cross, an unjust and painful death, solely because he loves us. He wants to save us from the punishment that's due to our sin nature and our sin choices. So Jesus really is got to be a critical part of our lives. The fourth element is recognizing that there is absolute moral truth. And fifthly, connected to that, we can find that truth out by going to the scriptures. The Bible is the place where God tells us what truth is. He is the embodiment of truth, but then he's kind of downloaded it, decoded that for us in the pages of scripture. So if we want to know what truth is, and truth is the only thing that is going to help us to be set free from the world and from our sin and whatnot, we've got to understand what the Bible says about that. A sixth of the cornerstones has to do with the fact that every one of us has a purpose to our life that God has given to all of us in common. Now, there's a more succinct purpose that he has for each one of us that we can know through our gifting and other things. But all of us are here on earth for one general purpose, and that's to know, love, and serve God with all our heart, mind, strength, and soul. And then the seventh of these cornerstones is to recognize that we are only successful in life when we become consistently obedient to his teachings. And so when you put those seven things together, that's not the totality of how to live a holy and righteous life, but man, does it put you on the road to that in a great way.
It really does. And hearing you walk through this, it just seems so basic. These are elementary principles that once were widely embraced in American culture. In fact, for a long, long time. It's just probably over the last 50 years or so that these things have started to fall away from us, and now they seem virtually foreign to us as a culture. In fact, there's great hostility to these things, but these are basic biblical principles. Do you agree?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I mean, the night that I discovered these things from pouring through the data and putting different things together, I thought, oh my gosh, when I describe this to pastors and youth leaders and children's pastors, they're going to laugh at me and say, come on, that's Sunday School 101. And that's exactly right. But the reality is not many people go to Sunday school anymore, not many children. And these are not the things that they're learning there. So if we could get back to that traditional Sunday School 101 kind of teaching, where people got this kind of bedrock information, the real solid foundation on which to begin building a deeper faith, yeah, it would make a world of difference.
Wow. And it was stunning to me, the statistic you gave prior to discussing those seven cornerstones, is that if one of them are missing, it only drops to a 2% likelihood of embracing a biblical worldview. That's stunning. So bottom line, Christians, we can't pick and choose which of these cornerstones to recognize. We can't say, I like this one, but I don't like that one. Your research reveals that the typical American adult is going to adopt beliefs and behaviors, and children, as you mentioned earlier, going to adopt beliefs and behaviors from multiple different worldviews, distinct worldviews. And you referred to it a while ago, and I want to come back to this. We're basically talking about people, if they reject a biblical worldview, then they're going to just choose from a hodgepodge of often contradictory type philosophies and worldviews. And you said this is syncretism. Go down that path. Explain this for us a little bit more.
Well, understand everybody has a worldview. You have to have a worldview to get through the day, because the worldview is your filter through which you make all your decisions. you're going to make decisions. And so we've got to figure out how to do that. And that's what our worldview enables us to do. But the reality is that it's our choice of what worldview to follow. Now, we don't typically have a strategic, intentional, consistent process for helping people to develop a worldview. It almost happens spontaneously, randomly, and circumstantially. And so we're in a situation where our research is showing the average American combines 9 different worldviews to get to their own customized worldview. They're drawing ideas from many different places: postmodernism, secular humanism, Eastern mysticism, Wicca, Satanism, a lot of different worldviews, Marxism, and putting them together into a customized blend that makes us feel comfortable, that makes us feel secure or safe, that we see other people adopting, so we know it's popular, so we're not going to get pushback for it. All these different things are contributing to the personal worldview that we develop. Now, the thing that we want to see happen is that we recognize, but those aren't based on truth. Those are based primarily on emotion and circumstance. And so they can change willy-nilly. What we really want people to do is to recognize there's a source of unchanging truth. That is God. God defines truth. We want to be aligned with that truth because it honors and glorifies Him, but it's also in our best interests. That's how we bless Him, but then He blesses us when we are in compliance with or in harmony with His truths. And so that's what a biblical worldview helps us to do, is to understand what is God's truth, how can we live according to it, and through that honor and glorify Him, advance His kingdom, and be blessed in the process. It's a win-win situation.
Well, you mentioned these 9 different worldviews that are inundating us and constantly changing. So you've got this process philosophy idea where everything is in process and culture just kind of goes along with all that is being thrown at it. Is there a predominant place that these competing worldviews are coming from? Is it the media? Is it education? Is it is there a place that parents need to say, I need to pay special attention to this area and what my family, my children are hearing?
Yeah, Jody, we find that it's really the arts and entertainment media that are dominating this space in our culture. They are the ones that are producing the worldview in the minds and the hearts and the souls of our children. Our kids are spending so much time with the media, and basically it's unsupervised time. There's no kind of oversight that's being given to our children to understand, wait, you were just exposed to Marxist ideology. It's false. Let me explain what that is and why that is, and what an alternative, a biblical alternative is to that concept that was just put at you in a piece of entertainment. And this is the insidious part of this process, is that it's while we're being entertained that we're growing our worldview. All these messages are being given to us in entertainment vehicles, whether it's video games, movies, television, music, books. There's so many different media vehicles that are teaching Americans worldview. That's the job of parents.
It's the job of parents. So let's land the plane on this this point here. We've only got about a minute or so left. The issue has to be resolved. Your book, Raising Spiritual Champions, where can people get it? And in about 60 seconds, top line, what would you say to parents?
Well, I'd say that the only people that make disciples are disciples. So number one, as a parent, you've got to be a disciple if you want your child or children to be followers of Jesus. And then secondly, recognize that biblically, it's your dominant responsibility in life. This may be the most important thing you ever do in your life, is to raise your child to be an ardent follower of Jesus Christ. Make them a disciple. You can't give what you don't have, so you've got to get there. Know these 7 cornerstones. build on them, then share that with your children through the relationship that you have with them. Spend more time on this than you do on sports, than you do on shopping, than you do on hobbies, than you do on watching movies and TV together. It's the most important thing that you're ever going to do. Do it well.
Dr. George.
Be intentional.
Dr. George Barna, thank you so much. Incredible research and a wealth of information. I encourage everyone to get a copy of this most recent book and these 7 cornerstones. They're huge. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.